Good morning. Welcome to Community Unitarian Church. I'm Joyce Thompson, your worship associate for today, and we are so glad you're here with us. This church, like every Unitarian Universalist congregation, is founded on a common vision and shared beliefs and principles. We have a big tent that welcomes people who come from all spiritual and religious backgrounds. And we do our best to lift up and honor the voices so often are not heard in the past and in the present, including people of color, people with non-traditional gender identities, and yes, of women. When I was 19 or 20, I first read the book, The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan. She was one of the early feminist writers of that particular time. And when I read it, it blew through my soul like a fresh breeze with ideas that were new to me and so liberating. It changed my life. And later, I heard Betty Friedan speak in person a few years later, and I cried when I heard her because she had made such a difference. And that's the power of the words that so often are not heard and listened to. Listening to women, ancient and modern, is the subject of our pastor Kris Cervantes' service today. I have a feeling it may be kind of fiery, so hang on to your seats and let's go.
We gather today in the spirit of life, of love, of justice. We gather to celebrate and recognize that our time together is a precious gift. We gather today, those of us with a uterus, those of us whose gender identities are challenged and criminalized by those in power. We gather today specifically to cry out to our oppressors, no more. We gather in the name of justice, responding together to its sacred call with our families and neighbors, our allies and friends. We gather with steadfast love in service of a world where all oppressions are challenged. We gather in hope that the chalice flame will light together in a moment, sparks the fire of commitment in every heart, all those who have hearts to hear and hands to serve. We gather to lift up and center the voices of those pressed down, discriminated against by laws created to control women's lives by holding our bodies hostage. We gather to affirm that we will speak up. Everywhere and anywhere a person with a vulva is gaslit into mistrusting their conscience, their context, or their competence to choose for themselves. We gather to support Planned Parenthood, longtime friend and ally of the Unitarian Universalist Association. They are laborers in the vineyards of advocacy. They care for all bodies and are educators to those who want to learn how informed, supported decisions about their health are life-transforming. We gather to receive and give one another the blessing of presence in community. An hour to breathe deeply, to gather up our anger and our love, and to move forward together in the face of adversity. Come, let us worship together.
As we light this chalice, May its flame inspire us to listen to and cherish the voices of all people as we use our powers to heal and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of Freedom. Love is a decision, it is a judgment, it is a promise, according to Erich Fromm. The congregation of this church is joined not by a creed, but by a promise based on shared values. Each week, we renew this promise by reciting our covenant. Please join me in saying aloud, love is the spirit of this church and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. This is the story of the wise woman's stone. A wise woman who was traveling in the mountains found a precious stone in a stream. The next day, she met another traveler who was hungry, and the wise woman opened her bag to share her food. The hungry traveler saw the precious stone and asked the woman to give it to him. She did so without hesitation. The traveler left rejoicing in his good fortune. He knew the stone was worth enough to give him security for the rest of his life. And yet, a few days later, he came back to return the stone to the wise woman. "I've been thinking," he said, I know how valuable the stone is, but I give it back in the hope that you can give me something even more valuable. Can you give me what you have within you that enabled you to give me that stone?
I am honored and dismayed to stand before you.
Damn right.
We have gathered to make our voices heard and our anger acknowledged. Yes. Despite a crumbling grid system that killed 210 Texans in February, despite violence created by white Americans in cities like Del Rio, despite the desperately needed medical and financial assistance from living within a worldwide pandemic, which has killed 700,000 people,
Americans,
our representatives decided to use our resources to attack and control vulva owners and children. From bills such as SB 29 and SB 373, which force children to put their bodies at risk in locker rooms that fit the gender marker on their birth certificate, to SB 1646 and SB 1311, which punishes guardians and physicians for giving care and support to children as they try to find their true voices and live their authentic lives. Texas legislation has made sure we know that they are willing to put our children on the chopping block. If you want to be pro-life, that's what fighting for life is really about. The horrors of these bills should stop us dead in our tracks. SB 1646 goes far as to claim that parents should be called child abusers, have their children taken from them, and put where? Our foster system is broken. 40% of homeless youth are LGBTQ children. These are children.
Great.
Yes,
To these politicians, I ask, why? Tell me why elevating the numbers of at-risk children is a worthy cause.
Amen.
Tell me why punishing doctors and guardians for safely assisting children as they live into their true selves is worthy of our clearly limited resources.
Why?
Friends, let us not be blind to the evil that stands before us. Time and time again, our political movers and shakers drag us through their muck so that they can earn a quick donor buck.
Yeah.
Americans are fed misinformation through the corruptive power of fear-mongering and deceit.
Yeah.
Rather than seeing the faces and hearing the stories of the women, children, and non-binary trans people that they are attacking, they hide in their gated houses and flee to Cancun while the rest of us suffer. We, the people, must unite.
Yeah.
We must act. We must scream our dissent from every building possible because we know the truth.
Yeah.
We know that every act of support and affirmation toward our queer children and women saves lives.
Yes.
You want to save lives? That's what saving lives looks like. We know that every loving embrace transforms and liberates children. And from this liberation comes creative power. It gives them the ability to know the basic human right that they have worth and dignity.
Yes.
These bills are not here to protect.
No.
They are here to control,
Amen.
silence, and oppress.
No way.
These are Americans who were born with the same basic rights for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So my friends, stay angry.
Yes. Yes.
For your anger is born from a thirst for justice.
Yes.
And what is more sacred, holy, and Christ-like than that?
Amen.
It's been a rough legislative session for Texas women, Texas trans folk, Texas queer folk, Texas voters, especially Texas voters of color. And when I wrote this reflection, I was thinking about the voices that are finally being raised up. I used Milo's speech from yesterday because they said anything I might want to say about how our legislature thinks about trans people and trans children so much better than I could have. But it's not just Milo's words that I've heard that have moved me. I think about all the women whose voices have lifted me up and have pushed us all, every one of us, forward. And so when I wrote this, I went back to sort of what seems to me like the beginning of this particular season that we're in our country. So we'll talk about an ancient prophetess, and then we're going to talk about a modern disaster. This is a content warning. Kids are welcome in our worship space always, or before, during, and after the message for all ages. But I do want to give you a heads up that today I'm planning to speak about a topic that is distinctly adult. There will be mentions of assault and harassment. There will be explicit quotes from public conversations about women and men and the ways in which we speak and act about and with them, particularly women. In addition, these topics are troubling and maybe triggering to some adults, especially women and trans folks. I invite you today and every Sunday to take care of yourself and your younger family members, however you need to. Let's start with a reading from the book of 2 Kings, chapter 22, concerning the finding of a book. I adapted it somewhat for ease of hearing. In the 18th year of King Josiah, the king sent Shaphan, his secretary, to the temple, saying, "Go up to the high priest Hilkiah and have him count the money collected from the people. Let it be given into the hand of the workers who are at the house of the Lord, repairing it, to the carpenters, to the builders, to the masons, and let them use it to buy timber and stone to repair the temple. But no accounting shall be asked from them for the money, for they deal honestly." The high priest Hilkiah said to Shaphan, he came back. So the high priest comes back and speaks to the king's emissary, Shaphan. "I've found the book of the law in the house of the Lord." And then Shaphan, the secretary, came to the king and said, "Your servants have given the money to the workers, and the priest Hilkiah has given me a book." Shaphan then read it aloud to the king. When the king heard the words of the book, he tore his clothes. Then he commanded the high priest Hilkiah, along with Shaphan and others of the royal household, "Go, inquire of God for me, for the people, for all of Judah, concerning the words of this book that has been found. For great is the wrath of God against us, because our ancestors didn't obey the words of this book." So the priest Hilkiah and the others, they went to the prophetess Huldah, the wife of Shallum, keeper of the wardrobe. She resided in Jerusalem in the second quarter. Huldah declared to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, tell the man who sent you to me, I will indeed bring disaster on this place and on its inhabitants, all the words of the book that the king of Judah has read, because they have abandoned me and made offerings to other gods and provoked me to anger with the works of their hands. Therefore, my wrath will be kindled against this place and it will not be quenched. But as for you, the king of Judah, who sent Huldah to inquire of the Lord, thus shall you, Huldah, say to him, the king, because your heart was penitent and you humbled yourself when you heard how I spoke against this place and its inhabitants, and because you have torn your clothes and wept before me, I also have heard you. Therefore, I will gather you to your ancestors, and you shall go to your grave in peace. Your eyes shall not see all the disaster that I will bring on this place." Hilkiah and the others took Huldah's message back to the king. This month, I was going to preach on a text from Jeremiah, a minor prophet during his life, a small town boy who was honored and heeded after his lifetime. He wrote during the Judean exile in Babylon, but another text kept clamoring to be heard. This text, the text of a prophet contemporary to Jeremiah, one whose name isn't borne on any book of the Bible. Instead of Jeremiah, you've heard the story of Huldah, one of the 7 female prophets of the Hebrew scriptures. But what is this story? What does all that mean? What was that book that was found? Why did the king freak out when he read it? And why was God so pissed? Well, to answer the last question first, God was angry, very ragey, because the book that the priest Hilkiah found as the workers were repairing the temple, probably, in some dusty drawer or chest somewhere. Well, that book was the lost book of the law written by Moses in his own hand. That book was the book of the rules and practices the Jewish people must follow. Hilkiah knew it was important as soon as he found it, and the king knew it too. And the reason they were afraid, the reason they needed a prophet to see how God was feeling about everything was basically this. The kings and priests had been so lax, so neglectful of preserving the history, the rights, and the spirituality of their people that they had lost the Torah scrolls. That's what the books were. So to put this into perspective, imagine how it would look if the Pope lost the New Testament. Imagine if the world of the Christian church, if they didn't have a single copy of the Bible and they forgot to celebrate Christmas and Easter. And that's what's happening here. Among other things, the newly discovered scroll mentioned the rite of Pesach, or Passover, which had been completely forgotten by the temple priests. Imagine if Jews today forgot to honor their liberation from Egypt, if they forgot to celebrate Passover. There are other things happening historically which explain what secular readers might consider the behind-the-scenes realities of these verses. All this talk of worshiping other gods is related to the fact that Israel, as a nation state, has always been between 2 or more empires. Egyptian, Babylonian, Persian, Greek, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman. There's never been a time when Israel was not clinging desperately to autonomy in the face of much more powerful kingdoms around it. Huldah's words warned of the Babylonian exile, which swept over Jerusalem in 598 and 597 BCE. Israel's leaders were playing footsie with neighboring empires. Hey, let's be friends over here. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be friends over here and tell you all about that. And it appears that they picked the wrong side to flirt with. And then I wonder if King Josiah regretted asking for God's take on the situation. Huldah's words are not reassuring. She doesn't say everything's okay, or even everything is going to be okay. The best comfort she offers, the best comfort God offers, is that Josiah will die before the temple falls and his people are exiled to Babylon. Prophets don't speak to comfort their listeners or themselves. The words of prophecy are rarely reassuring and even more rarely spoken by women. There are biblical women who prophesy: Miriam, Deborah, Huldah, Noadiah, Elizabeth, Mary, Anna, but they don't have any books named for them. They're sometimes unnamed entirely: Isaiah's wife in the Hebrew scriptures and the 4 prophetic daughters of Philip in the New Testament. Women's voices were more often silenced than lifted up. In the closing years of the Iron Age, women were defined in terms of their relationships to men rather than their relationships to God. Isaiah's wife, Philip's daughters, they prophesied, they spoke truth to power. They challenged cultural and religious norms that were harmful, but they did so as adjunct to the men for whom they existed. Even Huldah, who is named, is given this ancestry. The prophetess Huldah the wife of Shalom, son of Tikvah, son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe of the king. She was the wife of a man who was the son of a man who was the son of a man who kept the king's wardrobe. Huldah was defined by her relationship to a man who was defined by his relationships to men who were further defined by their relationship to a man, the king. In many ways, we've today moved past such androcentric definitions of women, and in many ways we have not. Now, I want you to reach back, far back into the misty recesses of time, all the way back to October of 2016. Americans were treated to a political uproar over the ways in which men speak about, think about, and define women. In case you've forgotten, I'm talking about the release of behind-the-scenes footage of former President Donald Trump and Billy Bush, an entertainment reporter, in which we overhear Trump say these words. This is explicit. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet, just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything. On October 7th, 2016, Kelly Oxford, a Canadian author and screenwriter, posted a tweet that said, "Women, tweet me your first assaults. I'll start. Old man on city bus grabs my pussy and smiles at me. I'm 12. The next day she said this, women have tweeted me sexual assault stories for 14 hours straight. Minimum 50 per minute. Harrowing. Do not ignore. Hashtag not okay." She later posted, I think this is the next day, I posted my assault, asked women to share theirs, thinking if no one discusses, I'll pull it down. We are now 9.7 million comments later. Every 5 minutes, people are still tweeting me stories of their first sexual assault. That was a week later. I had started to screen cap responses to her initial post to share with you here, but I stopped. I stopped after scrolling and scrolling and scrolling through woman after woman after woman, sharing some version of man in public, private, supposedly safe space, grabs, pushes, rubs, shouts, holds down, forces himself, curses at me. I was 4 years old, 9 years old, 14 years old, 20 years old. I don't recall seeing any stories of women older than that. That's because the first experience of sexual violence, whether verbal or physical, usually happens young. By the time a woman gets to 20 or 25 years old, this isn't new. It's not the first time anymore. I stopped looking at the number of responses to Kelly Oxford's tweet when I got to October 12th. There were 30 million responses. They are harrowing to read, not only in the stories they tell and not only in the sheer volume of those stories, but in the ways they bring to mind my own experiences, things I've rarely shared with others, stories I don't plan to share here. I had to stop reading because I've worked hard, like many women and trans people I know, to not let those stories be the only stories of me. And I'm not willing to give up that hard-won victory. I had to stop reading because I was not willing, and I am not willing here or anywhere else, at least right now, to share my own stories. And as I read, my stories rose up like bile in my throat. I felt sick and sad. And I don't have time to feel sick and sad right now because I have words to do and words to speak. There's a certain cultural response to these stories and the hashtag corollary not okay, which is hashtag not all men. And fair enough, I'm certain it's true. I know that not all men engage in these behaviors. and not all men engage in what has been labeled by those eager to dismiss Trump's words as locker room talk. But here's the thing. Hashtag not all men may be true, but so is hashtag yes, all women. Every woman I have known and spoken to, every intimate friend and many random acquaintances in my life can relate a story of sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual intimidation, and/or rape. I hope and pray that almost every woman in this room is thinking, goodness, how sad. I have zero experience with this kind of thing. But I suspect that's not the case. King Josiah and High Priest Hilkiah came to Huldah and said, tell me the truth. Tell me what God says about this failure, this mistake, this disease which has eaten its way into our culture, our worship, our way of life. And Huldah told the king the truth. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't try to comfort him. She gave it to him straight. Everything is about to go down the crapper, and the only good news I can give you is you're going to die before everything you know and love is brutally destroyed. You don't have to see it. No one in power came to those women on Twitter and made them that deal. No one said to them, tell me the truth. Tell me what God and every righteous and ethical and moral imperative says about this failure, this mistake, this disease of misogyny, which has eaten its way into our culture, our worship, our way of life. No one in power said, excuse me, women of the world, please tell us where we went wrong. Because we've gone wrong. If you live in the United States of America, you know we've gone wrong when it comes to how women and non-binary folk experience the worlds of sex and sexuality, gender and gender expression. If you live in Texas, you know that we've gone wrong when it comes to how women experience the worlds of academic, athletic, and professional endeavor. If you pay attention to history, you know we've gone wrong when it comes to how women experience the world of faith and religion. Here are the words of women. This is hard to hear. Be careful with yourself. Be gentle. This is what they have told us in explicit language in, at the time, 140 characters or less. A man drove by our soccer practice and yelled out his window, I can smell your private areas. I was 15. A man reached under my skirt and grabbed my panties on the subway. I was 9. My cousin trapped me in the closet with him. He said I'd be in trouble if I told. I was 5. A man followed me down the street, screaming that he wanted to F me and I'd like it. I was 13. Like Huldah, the women on Twitter, the women everywhere, this woman here, we are not sugarcoating it. We're not here to comfort you. We're not going to soften the truth because it makes you and me and other women and other men uncomfortable. It makes us feel sick and sad, and it makes the bile rise in our throats, and it should. We don't know what happened to Huldah after her prophecy. There are midrash traditions that she had a school in the second quarter of the city, that she taught women and girls about the Torah and the Tanakh. Did she survive the Babylonian invasion of Judea? Was she raped and killed when Jerusalem fell? Did she survive only to be exiled far from home? Even if she did survive to be exiled, Huldah wouldn't have lived long enough to see her people return to Jerusalem, much less to return herself. Prophets don't speak to comfort their listeners or themselves. Huldah raised her voice, but her words didn't change the immediate outcome. Persia came, Jerusalem fell, and the Babylonian exile occurred. But her words did change something. The Feast of Passover was restored, along with other laws which had fallen into disuse or dusty non-memory. In exile and after it, Through and despite the diaspora and the slow crumbling of their homeland, the Jewish people rebuilt their culture, their worship, their identity as a particular people of a particular God, defined by their relationship to that God. So, what will happen? What will change for the women who speak out today? Will their words change an immediate outcome? And will they change anything else? Will they change the world that our daughters, our sons, our children inherit? Will they change our culture, our worship, our identity as a particular people of a particular relationship to justice, compassion, righteousness, God, if you like? Prophets don't speak to comfort their listeners or themselves. If we feel sick and sad, if the bile rises in our throats, if we are moved to anger and to action, then the words of our feminist, queer, and womanist prophets, ancient and modern, Huldah to Mary to Maya to Milo, have done what they can. We are tired of being silenced. Our bodies are our own. Our voices and power are rising, and we will be heard. Amen.
Listen as your day unfolds, challenge what the future holds. Try and keep your head up to the sky. Lovers, they may cause you tears. Go ahead, release your fears. Stand up and be counted. Don't be ashamed to cry. You gotta be bad. You gotta be bold. You gotta be wiser. You gotta be hard. You gotta be tough. You gotta be stronger. Stay together. All I know, love will save the day. Harold, what your mother said. Read the books your father read. Try to solve the puzzles in your own sweet time. Some may have more cash than you. Others think a different view. You gotta be bad. You gotta be bold, you gotta be wiser. You gotta be hard, you gotta be tough, you gotta be stronger. You gotta be cool, you gotta be calm, you gotta stay together. All I know, love will save the day. Time asks no questions, it goes on without you, leaving you behind if you can't stand the pace. The world keeps on spinning, can't stop it if you try to. The best part is danger staring you in the face. Remember, listen as your day unfolds. Challenge what the future holds. Try to keep your head up to the sky. Lovers, they may cause you tears. Go ahead, release your fears. You gotta be bad, you gotta be bold, you gotta be wiser. You gotta be hard, you gotta be tough, you gotta be stronger. You gotta be cool, you gotta be calm, you gotta stay together. All I know, love will save the day. You gotta be bad, you gotta be bold, you gotta be wiser.
We say that the offering is a sacrament of the free church. What we mean by that is we believe it is a blessing to be able to govern and support our religious community ourselves. We make possible by our generosity, both in service and treasure, everything that we dream of and do to live out our shared values. Every week at this time, we pause to lift up the spiritual value of generosity by reminding ourselves to look into our hearts and see what is available there. How much love, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope. Let us take the offering from that account. You can donate by going to our website, and you can press the blue Donate Now button, or you can get our address off the website and send a check. We are very grateful for your generosity. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community. As the chalice flame is extinguished, let us carry its glow within. Let us light the way to more love and freedom in the world. Please join me in saying aloud, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Now, at the end of our gathering, before we enter into the busy world of things to do and places to go, let us take this moment to breathe into a shared silence. Our breath is always with us, and we can always come back to the breath, our anchor, our grounding, our freedom. Spirit of life and love, we are here not just minds and hearts, but bodies too. We human beings, bodies and spirits joined together. On this day, we send out a hope that every being may be safe and well in body and in spirit. May every person be well, and may we treat every person with respect and kindness and love, even when it's hard. On this day, when we consider the connections between our bodies and our spirits, we lift up our hope and our aspiration that all people will live in freedom to give and guard their bodies as seems best to them, and to exercise their own powers of moral discernment around their reproductive and creative potential. May we remember that it is especially challenging for those living in poverty to exercise these rights, for those of brown and black bodies used and broken by our nation for so long. These suffer the most. We say a special prayer for all those who have experienced violence or abuse, or any other form of damage to their being, which is so precious. May we know safety and healing. For all of us, may our physical being be a source of delight and solace and well-being as we live in this world. And as we age and those bodies become frail, let us take joy from the accumulation of wisdom. May every being be safe and well in body and in spirit. May every person, including you. Be well. And may we all and each be vessels of compassion and love and justice for everyone we meet.